If you concentrate solely on your career, you can get a long way in your career. And I would say that that's a strategy that a minority of men preferentially do. That's all they do. They work like 70, 80 hours a week. They go flat out on their career. They're staking everything on the small probability of exceptional status in a narrow domain. But it's hard on them. They don't have a life. It's very difficult for them to have a family. They don't know how to take any leisure activity, like they get very one-dimensional. Now, it may be that unidimensionality is the price you have to pay to be exceptional at one thing, right? Because if you're going to be something like a genius level mathematician, and you want to do that or a scientist, say, it's like you're in your lab all the time, you're working 70 hours a week or 80 hours a week, you're smart, you're dedicated, you're unidimensional, and that's how you get to beat all the other people who are doing that. It's the only way. But the problem is you don't get a life. Now, if you love being a scientist and you have that kind of focus of mind, well, first of all, you're a rare person, and second, you're going to pay for it. But fine, more power to you. It's like, well, you want to be an outstanding scientist. It's like, okay, really, that's what you want, because that means that's what you do. Because you're competing with other people, you know, they're smart, they're hardworking. And if you want to be at the top, you have to be smarter and work harder than any of them. And working hard means working long hours. I mean, it also means working diligently, but in the final analysis, it's also an additive issue. If I'm smart and hardworking and I can crank out for 70 hours a week, and you do it for 30, it's like, in 2 years, I'm so far ahead of you, you will never, ever catch up.
How do you explain so many men, so many young men who follow you, listen to you?
Because they need encouragement.
What if I told you that you're playing on young men's distress to make all that money?
Look, I've said right from the beginning that I'm an evil capitalist. I don't make any bones about it. I'm not ashamed of making money. It's very hard to make money. My book is selling about 20,000 copies a week. I have royalties that probably amount to something approximating $1.50 on each of those. The tours garner about $35,000 to $50,000 an evening. I have a business that's generating something in the neighborhood of $200,000 a month for me personally. Well, is there something wrong with generating money? It's like, well, it depends on what you're going to do with the money. You know, like if you're going to spend it all on and then probably that's reprehensible. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be a lateral thinker. And so you'll be the sort of person, if you hear an idea, that will trigger off a whole bunch of other ideas. And you'll be motivated primarily by interest in pursuing your ideas. But your downfall is likely to be organizational administrative ability. So it's often useful for entrepreneurial types to pair themselves with managerial and administrative types. And there's this weird tension between doing one thing right, which is what you need to do if you've already decided what it is that you're doing, and scanning the landscape for something new to do that would be worthwhile. Those aren't the same enterprises. And so most companies are an uneasy marriage of entrepreneurial and managerial types. As the company gets more and more established, the managerial and administrative types tend to dominate. But then that becomes problematic because it means it's more and more difficult for the company to shift laterally when it has to, which is, again, I think why so many companies eventually fail.
Because they lose the creative head, is that what you mean?
Sure, they lose the flexibility.
Yeah.
And it's funny because they're trying to maximize their ability to implement, but it's very difficult to do that without also simultaneously bearing the cost of narrowing. Right? So the thing is if you know what you're doing, you want to hire a conservative. If you don't know what you're doing, you want to hire a liberal. That's the problem. The fundamental problem is most new ideas are stupid, dangerous, and counterproductive.
And they're the ones that change the world.
well, they are sometimes. They are sometimes, but there's a subset of new ideas that, even though new ideas are dangerous and disruptive and often counterproductive and generally don't result in a productive company, some of them are absolutely necessary, and they're the thing you need to do next. And so. And that's a very difficult problem to solve because it's the fundamental problem of innovation. It's like most innovations aren't justified or warranted, but some of them are absolutely crucial. So how do you distinguish between them? And the answer is, well, we don't know. The part of the way that you do that in a dynamic economy is you let and encourage a whole host of entrepreneurs to produce their ideas, and you let almost all of them fail, which is kind of painful for the entrepreneurs. The other thing you see often with entrepreneurs is that they fail a lot before they succeed. And so, I mean, you have to be pretty damn spectacularly lucky to have your first idea when you don't know what the hell you're doing be a spectacular success.
Or maybe it's a good idea, but you weren't ready, and you're more ready.
Or the marketplace isn't ready. Or, I mean, that's the other thing that people don't really understand, is because if you're a naive entrepreneur, you think, well, all I have to do is make a great product. It's like, no, that's about 5%. You know, and that shocked the hell out of me when I started building software, for example, because we assumed that we developed software to help people select better employees, and we never could sell it except in very rare circumstances. But we assumed that if we had a product that was validated, we could show that it had the effects that we wanted, and that it was more efficient than other products in the marketplace, that selling it would be easy. It's like, well, that's just so wrong. Well, and you don't know how to price it, and you don't know who to talk to sell it. You know, you can spend your whole life, especially if you're selling to companies, which is virtually impossible, talking to the wrong people, and it feels like work, and it really is work, but you never end up contacting a real decision maker, and then you can't tolerate the excessive delay. Like, you think, well, I'm going to go sell this product to a big company because they can obviously provide me with a massive contract. It's like, yeah, but there's a relationship between the size of the company and the delay in implementation, and the delay can be years. And then, but this happened to us all the time. It was very painful. We'd get right to the point of signing with a large company, and there'd be an internal management transformation, and the person that we were dealing with would disappear. It's like, oh no, it's like, now what? We actually had that happen with a really big company in New York. We were right on the verge of signing a contract for use of this self-authoring program that we designed, which helps people plan their lives. And the week that we were ready to sign the contract, the CEO resigned. So gone. Was probably a year of sales and marketing work just evaporate. They emphasize the development of the company, but they don't force their entrepreneurs to find customers, because your first customer is the most difficult thing you'll ever do as a business person, in my experience. To find someone who will actually pay you that first time.
That isn't your mum.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's right. That isn't a family member. That's an actual customer. And the other problem that people face when they're trying to sell a new product is, one of the ways that people decide whether they're going to buy something is whether or not A, they know anyone else who's already bought it, or B, if there's other people in their domain that are already using it. And if your sales pitch is, well, no, this is new and revolutionary, you think, well, that's a wonderful sales pitch. It is like it is if you're talking to someone who's entrepreneurial and risk-taking and interested in revolutionary ideas. But if you're talking to a middle manager in a company, the last thing that person wants to hear is, well, you could be a risk-taker and introduce this into your company. The person's thinking, I don't want to put my job or reputation on the line for your product, even if it is revolutionary, in part because if it succeeds, I probably won't be rewarded for its success. And I came out of the whole enterprise with way more respect for people, especially for people who do sales. Jesus, that's such a brutal job. And, you know, when people it's easy for people to, it's even a popular trope to be somewhat contemptuous of salespeople, you know. It's really, really hard to be a good salesperson. And people like that are unbelievably rare, and they're unbelievably valuable. It's virtually impossible for you to monetize your product. That's the first thing you have to understand. So maybe you'll get lucky and you'll figure out a strategy. But if you add contempt for the sales and marketing process to that impossibility, you can be bloody well sure that all you're going to do is starve. So you better drop your contempt for the sales and marketing end of this if you want to sustain yourself through your life. And that's going to be a prerequisite for your creative endeavor. And so, and art schools and establishments like that do an absolutely dreadful job of...
Well, they don't teach it.
No,
I was
not
an
at all.
artist. I was an artist. I went through art school.
Yeah.
They don't teach it.
No.
Never once.
No, I know. And and I mean...
How are you going to commercialise your venture? How are you going to pay for your mortgage? What, just...
How are you going to buy food?
Yeah, with just a paintbrush and a canvas.
Oh, Jesus. And artists are in particularly dire position, because as a visual artist, for example, you're not only competing with all the visual artists that now exist, and there's plenty of them, but you're also competing with all the dead artists who already have an established reputation and a body of work that's being still being exchanged in the marketplace.
Yeah.
What could you do to improve yourself? Well, let's step one step backwards. The first question might be, why should you even bother improving yourself? And I think the answer to that is something like, so you don't suffer any more stupidly than you have to. And maybe so others don't have to either. It's something like that. You know, like there's a real injunction at the bottom of it. It's not some casual self-help doctrine. It's that if you don't organize yourself properly, you'll pay for it, and in a big way, and so will the people around you. Now, and you could say, well, I don't care about that, but that's actually not true. You actually do care about that, because if you're in pain, you will care about it. And so you do care about it, even if it's just that negative way, you know. It's very rare that you can find someone who's in excruciating pain who would ever say, well, it would be no better if I was out of this. Sort of pain